nasty, filthy oxes.
Gollum. A miserable, wretched creature from the works of J.R.R. Tolkien, who's easy to hate and just as easy to pity. After being a side character in both Bilbo and Frodo's journeys and all of the adaptations of them, he's now the main character in his own game, The Lord of the Rings Gollum. Now, as GameSpot's certified Lord of the Rings expert, I recently attended a hands-off preview event for the game. I saw a big chunk of gameplay and had the opportunity to ask the development team some questions. So here are 7 things I learned. The Lord of the Rings Gollum takes place roughly parallel to the events of the early chapters of the Fellowship of the Ring. As a little recap, in The Hobbit, Gollum loses the One Ring, or should I say, the One Ring loses Gollum, only for it to be picked up by Bilbo Baggins and his Hanses. In the time between The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, Gollum is desperate to find the ring once again, and so he eventually leaves the cave, which he's called home for a couple of 100 years, to try and track down Bilbo through Mirkwood. But the trail has gone cold. He eventually turned to go to Mordor, where he was captured by Sauron's forces and tortured into giving up the name of the One Ring's new carrier and where they could be found. After leaving Mordor, Aragorn captured Gollum, and Gandalf interrogated him to find out what Sauron knows. Now, there's a lot to play around with here in terms of story, but it won't cross over with the Fellowship's quest too much, allegedly ending somewhere around the Mines of Moria. The dev team also confirmed that there wouldn't be flashbacks to before he found the ring. This is very much Gollum's game, so who knows if we'll even actually meet up with Frodo and the rest of the Fellowship. Let's go over Gollum's abilities then. True to Tolkien's description, he is a sneaky, stealthy, but very athletic boy who prefers to avoid head-on confrontation, but can still do some damage when cornered. As a stealth action game, prepare to do a lot of sneaking as well as a lot of climbing. The levels of the game that I saw in action, Cirith Ungol and Mirkwood, were both filled to the brim with climbing and platforming puzzles. Gollum can leap over large gaps as well as climb various formations in the environment like vines and rock faces, but when he's hanging on by just his arms, he has a stamina bar that begins to deplete. When it comes to stealth, just like practically every modern game with stealth elements, there's a kind of detective mode that you can activate. It's called Gollum Vision, which I don't remember that from the book, but in the gameplay that I saw in Cirith Ungol, Gollum was hiding from 2 orcs and activated the Gollum Vision, and it showed not only where the orcs were in the environment, but it also showed hiding spots and sort of the general direction of your objective. Combat then, you can knock out enemies, but it's incredibly risky. First of all, unlike most modern stealth games, enemies make noise when attacked, and taking them down takes a while, so you really need to be sure that the coast is clear. You also need to make sure you even have enough stamina to finish the job, so honestly, sneaking might just be your best bet. Gollum obviously doesn't have a huge weapon wheel full of things to use, but he can pick up small items like rocks to throw and cause a distraction that way. There will also be boss-like encounters, but apparently they will be more puzzly than combat-driven. We've talked a lot about Gollum, but we haven't even mentioned Smeagol, the other main character in this game, so to speak. Before being corrupted by the One Ring, Gollum was a hobbit-like creature called Smeagol. His hundreds of years with the ring changed him into the figure we know of him today, but over that time his personality cracked, for lack of a better word. The Gollum personality is full of hatred. Hatred for the elves, himself, and despite craving its return, even the ring. Smeagol, on the other hand, is the more optimistic, naive side, who remembers what it was like to feel emotions like happiness and love. As a result, they argue, and in the game this is presented as a choice-driven mechanic, either side with Gollum or with Smeagol. Siding with one strengthens that persona, affecting other things in the game, such as the fate of some characters, as well as certain situations you stumble across, but it doesn't give either side unique abilities. The dev team said that this wouldn't make sense lore-wise because it's 2 personalities, yes, but they are within the same body. The choice I saw in action was Gollum arguing with Smeagol over whether or not to kill and eat a bug. Now, obviously that's not a huge decision in the grand scheme of things, but it did offer a really nice character moment when the Smeagol side won. It showed how pitiful and lonely he is, and honestly it had huge "it was pity that stayed Bilbo's hand" energy. We obviously know that Gollum is going to be in the game, but which other recognizable faces from Tolkien's vast Middle-earth can we expect? A good few, as it turns out. In Cirith Ungol, there are numerous references to Shelob, from webbing everywhere to Gollum mentioning her name outright. I also saw a cutscene featuring a fell beast, the big winged creatures that the Nazgul ride, so I wouldn't be surprised if they show up too. Throughout the gameplay, I saw Gollum was having audio flashes, I'm unsure if they were flashbacks or flash forwards, to his interrogation with Gandalf. Later on in the gameplay that I saw, we ended up in Mirkwood, and Gandalf and Thranduil were there discussing the One Ring and Gollum. Now, given that Aragorn is the person who brings Gollum to Mirkwood, I wouldn't be surprised if he showed up too. The development team has also introduced new characters. There was an elf called Mel, who was in the gameplay that I saw, although I didn't get to see Mel, I just heard her voice. She has also been imprisoned in Thranduil's halls, and Gollum strikes an uncanny friendship with them to the point where he's even trying to rescue her from the prison that she's in. If you're on the hunt for more Easter eggs and references to the Lord of the Rings, apparently they will be bountiful, and there will be collectibles that will definitely appeal to Tolkien fans. In terms of locations, I've mentioned a few already. We'll definitely be exploring Cirith Ungol and Mirkwood. The devs also name-dropped Barad-dûr during the presentation, which makes a lot of sense given that that's where Gollum is taken when he's captured by Sauron. You can also explore Gollum's cave, where he has a bunch of drawings that he's done on the rocks and on the walls of events in his life. If you choose to interact with them, you get these kind of nice character moments where both Gollum and Smeagol will weigh in on their interpretation of the events. A big question when it comes to tie-in media: is the Lord of the Rings Gollum canon? I can confirm it is. The development team Daedalic struck a deal with Middle-earth Enterprises, who ultimately have to approve everything to make sure it's accurate to what J.R.R. Tolkien wrote. While we know a little about Gollum's journey at this point in the story, there is still plenty that's been left unwritten, and so the development team have gone in and wrote their own story. In terms of the aesthetic, Gollum obviously doesn't look like the one from Peter Jackson's film trilogy, nor is he played by Andy Serkis. In The Lord of the Rings Gollum, he is played by Wayne Forrester, a British voice actor who has been in a bunch of things, but most recently he was one of the male protagonist voices in Elden Ring. I'm not sure who is doing the voice of Gandalf, but whoever it is, they are seriously doing their best Ian McKellen. We actually don't have that long to wait until The Lord of the Rings Gollum launches. It'll be hitting PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, and PC on September 1st, a whole day before the new Lord of the Rings TV series The Rings of Power premieres on Amazon Prime. The game is confirmed to be coming to Nintendo Switch later this year, but there's no release date just yet. There won't be a collector's edition, but there will be some kind of digital deluxe edition with some more bells and whistles if that's your thing. And as someone with the extended editions of all the movies, yes, including the Hobbit trilogy, that's probably me. Anyway, that's everything I learned about the Lord of the Rings Gollum from that recent preview event that I went to. If you have any more questions about it, make sure to drop them in the comments below. I will be going through them and answering as best as I can, or you can come find me on Twitter. I'm at LucyJamesGames. For more on the Lord of the Rings Gollum, as well as any upcoming Lord of the Rings stuff, keep your eyes peeled to GameSpot and GameSpot Universe.